know that's how this is starting.
Right now, I have to stop saying. Right now, I have to
There it
stop
is.
saying.
It's every show starter now, ever since Luddy said that to Mark Janko a week and a half ago. We're back for hockey. We've been here the whole time. Some people got time off. Not us. We work. We, Four Nations, Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Let's just do it. Stars pregame show. Let's go.
Get ready, boys.
If you're not a fan of Van Halen, you might not get the thumbnail, but boy, it's a sharp one from our producer, John Anderson, today. This is the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show. Craig Ludwig, look who's in New Jersey. Sam Nestler, he's in the motherland as he's getting ready for today. I'm Owen Newkirk. Stars and Devils are back in action. And you know, Sam, it's weird. This is the only team the Dallas Stars haven't played. We get to February 22nd. And this is the one team they haven't seen yet in the calendar.
Yeah, and it's a good team, right? It's not like this is a team that's not going to be in the playoffs. This is a team that found a way to come back and really respond after everyone thought they were going to be a contender for a long time, and then they had a down year, but they've had a great year, and it's a loud crowd tonight in Newark, and Saturday night, man, what's better?
So let's start right away with our lineup discussion. We'll show the lineup cards in a minute, but you can tell us what you heard. Pete DeBoer, the Stars did not have a morning skate today. The Devils did, so we have a pretty good idea how they're going to line up. But the Stars opted to practice yesterday early in Frisco. I think it was 9:30 Central Time, then travel, and then they're not going to skate today. And obviously tomorrow, being a back-to-back, they won't do that. So what did Pete have to say to you and the surrounding media horde in Newark?
Yeah, it's good seeing Pete come back to places he's been, right? He's loved here, just I'm sure like he is in Vegas and San Jose. But Pete made a joke right away. Mike Heika always says, starting goalie and lineup changes. And first of all, Casey DeSmith's going to go tonight. Jake Oettinger will play tomorrow. Pete said, look, they're both going to play games this weekend, so we figured why not put Casey in. He's been practicing. Jake's been out. He hasn't been practicing. He's been playing Four Nations. Played the game. Why not just give him the extra day off here? Didn't really talk. It wasn't much going into the opponents, one team being better than the other. It was more about Casey's been on the ice with the team. Let's let him go and let Jake go tomorrow. For lineup changes, though, Pete DeBoer immediately said, oh, boy, not sure if I even remember our last lineup. And then he started laughing and naming Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon. People, I mean, it's been a week. It's been a couple of weeks for Pete DeBoer. He's had some pretty big names to deal with, but we will see Ilya Lyubushkin back in the lineup tonight. He is back healthy, been skating all week, so not a huge surprise there. Brendan Smith, former Devil, will be out of the lineup tonight, as well as Colin Blackwell will be the scratch up front. So pretty similar lineup to what we've seen. Sam Steele, I believe, was out last game against San Jose, as well as Lyubushkin. So those two back in the lineup, and Smith and Blackwell out.
Getting Lyubushkin healthy is a big deal, and I'll talk to Luds about all this because I know you got to get to warm-ups really soon, but you really don't think that the goaltending choice had anything to do with the past history against opponents?
Yeah, it could. It very well could. Just saying what Pete said. I asked him specifically. I said what went into it, and that's what he said. He said it was mostly about the goaltending, the rest versus the practice, as well as Jake coming off a very high energy, takes a lot out of you to go into that tournament, even though he's not playing. But I'm sure that is part of it as well. I know that coaches are a little smarter than they like to lead on, and Pete actually joked today about being the assistant coach at the Four Nations and how it was nice to take a step back and be able to joke around with players a little more and not be as serious all the time, which is something he hasn't done in a really long time. So it's an interesting shift for the players that were on a break, for the players that were in the Four Nations, and then for the coaching staff as well.
Now, we bag on you constantly, and let's face it, it's fun. But we also
Obviously.
bag on Luddy, myself, John. I mean, it's free reign. You're a New Jersey native. You get to work an NHL game with your favorite team, the Dallas Stars, which is, again, unexpected being in New Jersey, but at Prudential Center. I know, like, one of the early games I ever went to was at the old Continental Airlines Arena, Devils Bruins, but it's got to be cool for you, Sam, to do a Stars-Devils game in New Jersey as a NHL paid full-time beat writer for DLLS.
That's the key word that you said there, paid, because I've done plenty of games at the Prudential Center, but I didn't make a whole lot of money doing it. It is cool. It's cool to see worlds collide, right? Because not only did I grow up here, going to Devils games, my first ever game was at Continental Airlines Arena, Stars Devils in the 2000 final. But it also is this first time really working here. I came last year to the game as a fan with my now fiance, but it's just cool to be here and see both sides of it, right? Running into people that I knew that cover the Devils, seeing the coaches and TV staff and everybody like that. It's really cool to have the worlds kind of collide there, and I'm just really excited about it. I'm very blessed to be here, very lucky. I actually am doing the show. You can't really see it, but I'm doing the show from where they put me last year as a Devils writer, which is way the hell in the corner away from everybody else. And this time I'm center ice. So DLS, we get stuff done here.
So they get a little more prestige than working for what you were doing previously, right?
Substack. Yeah.
Attaboy. Well, hey, go find the line combos. We'll be looking for it. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you afterwards.
All right. See you, boys.
All right. There's Sam Nestler working today in New Jersey, Luds.
That's not work, is it? That's not work. That's enjoyable work.
You traveled your entire professional career. You were on the it was back before they did charter flights, when you had to kill time on layovers in the airport.
Horse and buggy.
You had to thread a $20 bill with fishing line to kill the time and have some fun in there.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of 20s. I used the $5 bill.
I was going to say, back then, it wasn't the collective bargaining agreement where they're using hundreds.
They walked right by my $5 bill to get to the 20 the big guys had like 2 rows over.
So I kid you not, I have a VHS tape of an old hockey bloopers thing from the 80s and 90s that I used to watch. And it's hilarious. John Davidson looks young in that, by the way. It's JD's goalie school. He did a thing on that. And Brian Berard is in that with no teeth and, cuts everywhere going, oh, yeah, we'd put money in a $20 bill on some fishing line. I think Kirk Muller was part of that. I mean, there's just great old names that you played with.
But you get bit after a while because some of the people that are walking through the airport, they've seen it, right? And they've been busted at it before. So now they walk up to that $20 bill and they act like they don't see it, but they see it. Then they step on it really quick. And then you try to pull it away from it, just pull a little tear out of it. They grab the bill, they look around, they kind of smile, and they just walk off.
And then you're out your $20.
You lost your $20.
Let's talk about goaltending. We'll show the D card here from what we think the Stars are going to line up on, and Sam will update us in a few minutes. But I'm looking at the goalies. I'm a little surprised because I just thought, okay, Jake Oettinger, he was with Team Canada. He was practicing with them. With the United States. I'm looking at Harley. I must have been a Freudian slip. So he's playing with the U.S. He played the game against Sweden. So he hasn't had 2 weeks off. You're going to go with him first. You think it may have something to do with what he was doing as the U.S. backup versus what Casey's doing with the team practicing?
Yeah, this doesn't surprise me. They were at an event, and he played one game. And when you say he's practicing, there's only a couple guys on the ice, right? And they're trying to get guys rested. They're playing every other day. They played sometimes back. No, they don't even know if they played a back-to-back. Did they?
What, in the Four Nations? Yeah, no, they had the day in between.
Yeah, they had the day in between. One day they had the day off. So I just don't think he's been in a lot of game action. So I think what they're thinking is let's get him with some more traffic, and I don't know when that's going to be, but they're obviously not going to have it tomorrow morning. So there'll be a couple guys out there maybe tomorrow morning for him to get some shots and things like that. So I think just to kind of get back engaged, there's a lot of outside noise going on around that event. And so I think there's a few more distractions going on. And I think now you get into the routine a little bit more, and I think you'll be more dialed in for tomorrow.
I have one counter to your – I think you make a reasonable argument for why they went with Casey over Jake. However, and you could tell me that I'm full of it. You usually do, so that's nothing new. Jake Ottinger's career versus the Devils, 3 games, 0-2-1, 4.18 goals against average, .839 save percentage. Casey DeSmith, 3-3, 2.69, 9.22. That's better in 8 games. Jake Oettinger versus the New York Islanders, tomorrow's opponent. 5 games started, 4-1 with a 1.58 goals against average and a 9.41 save percentage. He has owned the Islanders. Do you think that perhaps having Jake play against the Islanders had something to do with the decision to go with Casey today?
Nope. I think it's everything I just got done saying.
Okay.
I don't. What is Casey's numbers against the Islanders?
I can tell you
he would
that.
have a bigger record than Otter
Being
would.
in the East, you would think, right?
But I really, regardless, I don't think 3 games that doesn't have a winning is a big sample size. I think if he had 15 games and he had won 3 of them, that's a little bit different.
Casey's played 9 against the Islanders, started 7, 4-2-1, 2.67 goals against, 9.04 save percentage. Not bad. Jake's numbers are astronomical. The only reason I saw that went, sometimes when they're doing the toss-up, the other thing is, and they've tried it before, you're number 1 for the second half of a back-to-back when your team is a little bit more fatigued. Yeah. Can that be the difference? And that's maybe the other thought.
Yeah, and I'm sure Jeff Reese had a lot to do with this. I would think that this decision wasn't made today. It was made a few days ago. And it may even been made before the Four Nations even started, saying, well, let's see what kind of work, and when he's going to play, if he's going to play, and all this other stuff. And I just think that, he'll get a little bit more dialed in. And there were a lot of things going on the last couple of days, with the games and the events and all this kind of stuff. So just kind of calm down and gather yourself together and get your head in it.
And just to be clear, this is not me saying Jake should start over Casey. It's just trying to figure out why they made the decision. Because honestly, with the way that Casey's played this year, and we've got his stats, he's been phenomenal. 9 wins in 17 appearances, 9-6-0, 9.11 save percentage, exactly the same as Otter in 40 starts. And I was talking to Casey on Wednesday. I went to practice on Wednesday in Frisco, and I said to him, we had that discussion about how for most of the season, Casey has not had the goal support. If he doesn't keep the goals against to 2 or less, if it's 3 or higher, he's lost until his last 2 starts. And so and Jake has had a lot higher goal support and over a goal a game average difference. And I went to Casey and I said, hey, the last 2 ones you gave up 3 and they won. And he goes, yeah, it's nice every now and then to not have to be so perfect to get a victory.
It's a mental thing. I think when your team is only scoring a couple goals and a goal goes in, say early in the first 10 minutes of the first period, now you're like, man, I got to buckle down for the next 2/3 of the game, because here's what's going to happen. And we're, if I don't keep one more or let one more in than I should. So I think that's why goaltenders that have that run support seem to be a calmer kind of a demeanor about them as they go along in games like that. And I think you can see some goaltenders when they, some of the teams at the bottom of the league that are giving up a lot of high-end quality chances and they don't score a lot, then I think goaltenders are on edge as soon as they get in the net.
Back to action after 13 days off, meaning 13 days between the last game in San Jose till today. Not the guys that have been practicing since Tuesday of this week or the guys that were on the Four Nations trip, but 13 days without an NHL game. Is it going to be harder for the guys from the Four Nations who didn't really have that rest, but were playing at a exceptionally high level, or the guys that had a week off, but then have been practicing for 4 or 5 days?
I think it's harder for the guys that had all the time off. You look at guys coming in, I look at 2 guys here that could be the difference in tonight's game. And there's one from each side, one from Finland, one from the U.S. And that's 2 of the big guns on both sides of the team. I look at Jackhughes because he had 1 assist in 4 games, wasn't good at all. The last game, didn't like him in the U.S. game.
Were you disappointed with his Four Nations tournament?
That's what I mean.
That's what I mean, because I know he wasn't that great, but were you expecting more from Jackhughes?
Yeah, I was. And I think when you, especially against Canada, that's when you see guys step up, and he's such a good player, but you're surrounded by good players everywhere you look in that tournament. And so I expected more of him. I'm sure he expected more of himself. But again, it's a little bit more difficult to play because every time you go on the ice, there's somebody good on the other side trying to keep the puck away from you. And the other one is Rupe. So I look at those 2 guys. I look at those 2 guys tonight, but I do think it's easier the guys that did play because they're kind of in some kind of rhythm and in a game like rhythm. And I do think it's a little bit easier coming in as the visitor versus being at home. I think if Dallas was at home tonight, you always know when Dallas plays at home, they're expected to put on a good game and show. And I think there's less pressure on you on the road. And what you have to do in a game like this, because it could be ugly, so to speak, like start of the season, things might not be clean. So you just kind of want to manage the game in the beginning. You want to make sure pucks are in deep and keep them out of the high quality danger areas in your own zone, spend more time there and kind of get yourself back into the flow of the game. And it's vice versa for the other team. I think they're at home now. They're all excited. Their team is back. Their team is doing well this year. They're expecting things out of them. So, and I just think that Jack Hughes has got something to prove. And I think Rupe's got something to prove.
Yeah. Not to say that I always put you on the spot to carve a guy. I don't think Jack Hughes was as good as he was fine. He wasn't great. And I wanted him to be great because he's one of the top scoring players in the NHL this season. He's got a ton of skill. I'm hopeful that this tournament's frustrations for him individually and as a team will be a really good thing for him for the Olympics next year in Italy.
I agree with that. And I think he's got a taste. He knows what it's all about. I mean, I think he's known what it's about. They all know this going in. I just think that maybe the stage was a little bit bigger than he thought it was going to be. And some of the stars that were there that took over and that were be able to play in that environment, he didn't step up. And maybe he didn't get as many opportunities also, though. You play in that kind of a short tournament, they're rolling guys that are on it. And so I expect him to be more visible tonight against Dallas. And I'm hoping that Rupe is also. And I'm hoping that Rupe plays the game that we know that he can play, because not just to get back into the rhythm from coming off of the Finland stuff, but you're in the 20s now, and start putting together your game that you're going to need to take when you get into game 83 and so on.
Well, we haven't done a pregame show since February the 8th. It's now February the 22nd, but we haven't forgotten how to do that. We're going to show you the lines and everything next here on the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show. But first, we've got to talk about Sleeper. And when we talk about Sleeper, we just remind you that is basically similarly the best fantasy platform out there. Well, you can put your ball knowledge to the test. I like puck knowledge personally by picking your favorite or least favorite players to have more or less than their projected stats each week. With Sleeper, the more picks you combine, the more you can win, all the way up to 100 times your money. Sleeper keeps you in the loop with instant alerts for breaking news and major injuries, stay ahead of the game, and keep track of daily league updates in real time so you're always informed and ready to outsmart your friends. If you think you have what it takes, new users can download the Sleeper app and use the code DLSSTARS to get $55 in free entries when you place a $5 contest. Apply it to any contest, doesn't have to be your first. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Now it's time for us to do a Sleeper game picks. Jason Robertson has a chip on his shoulder, and you can watch as we set this up on the screen here. After missing out on Team USA at the Four Nations face-off, let's take Robo to score more than 0.5 goals. Meanwhile, Logan Stankoven, he's yet to find his game after a really good start to the season. He's expected to continue to play lower in the lineup, but let's take Stankoven to record less than 1.5 shots on goal. Maybe a little risk because he always seems to get his shots, but I like the idea of that today. If those two picks hit, then you'll earn more than 5 times your entry on the Sleeper app. All right, Luds, let's talk about who's going to play, who's not playing, and who's going to play with whom. So we'll start with Ilya Lyubushkin back in the lineup. He was injured with an upper body injury after the Anaheim game. We saw him hiking, which Jenks had a great line saying he had an injury that didn't affect his hiking ability.
Yeah.
But he's back, and how that shakes up the D pairings. And he will come in, and even though it's against his old team, Brendan Smith played for several of them. He played for the Devils last year. Smith will come out for Lyubushkin to go in.
Yeah, and I think if him and Thomas, what we're assuming, are going to play together, Harley, I think it could be, I think as far as Thomas Harley goes, I think you could put CC there, you could put Lyubushkin there, and I don't think it would matter. And obviously, Essa would play with the other one. So I think that there's probably a little bit more of Essa, CC versus top lines, and maybe that's who they're going to put them together. And both, there's some size on all those forwards.
Would you like to hear that you're right?
Oh, I am?
So according to Sam, who's at Prudential Center, send it up. Go ahead and put up the D pairings again. This is the correct group. Harley with Lyubushkin, Lindell with CC, and Bischel moves down and plays. He was playing with CC in the last game against San Jose with Lyubushkin out. Bischel will play with Dumba. You say you like the fact that there's size on those three pairings.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that and again, with these pairings here and when you're on the road, you don't get the last change. So you see a fourth line come out there, a third line come out there, you can go ahead and throw one of these pairs out there because you know one of those first or second lines are coming up, and you're okay with either pair that you put out there. And if there's a time to change, they'd probably want to get Essa and like tonight, Essa and CC maybe against Hughes and Jesper Bratt or whoever they're playing with tonight. So that would probably be the ideal matchup, is to get Essa out there specifically against that top line.
Let's take a look at the forward group for the Stars, and we were correct based on our projections, and Sam confirms it. They're going to put Johnston back on the top line with Robertson and Hintz. Obviously, having Marchment back is a big deal. Granlund was fantastic for Finland at the Four Nations. He stays with Duchesne and Marchment for now, although he could easily move to the third line and center if he had to. I kind of like the way this all shakes out. Colin Blackwell is the odd man out here, but this, even without Tyler Seguin, feels like you have depth on your lines.
Yeah, and you've got pairs there. You've got guys that are grinders. You got guys that get pucks off the wall. You've got speed with Duchesne. You've got that deception that he does. He likes to pull up, come back to the other side of the ice. Wyatt Johnston, he seems to have his game back in order now. And I think with Hintz and Johnson, it opens up that ice behind those two guys as far as Robo's concerned. He can come in and he can either pick it up late in the high slot, or he comes in, he looks for the rebounds. And again, if Rupe's going, when he hits that offensive blue line, he pushes the defenseman back a little bit. And that's why I think, and Wyatt can keep up with him. And so I can see it going from Rupe over to Wyatt, and then Robo kind of comes in late with that hole in the middle of the ice because he's pushed defenseman back, and there's that gap in between the forwards coming back. But I think I think Pete's going to be happy that he's got options like that. But yeah, it's a good lineup, and you never know, there could be somebody else at some point dropping in there in the next week or two.
You never know. Wait, 2 weeks to go before the trade deadline. Could they add another piece? I still don't think that it's going to be Mikko Rantanen, although the big-time national, international pundits out there keep saying that teams are asking. I think the Hurricanes are fine with him. I know he hasn't put up the points, but I think they're absolutely fine with him. We'll get into that at another time. Luds, we have been talking a lot about the Four Nations. What are you expecting from – now, Jake's not playing today, but we know how disappointing the game that Hintz had for Finland. The games – Lindell was great, Harley was great, and Granlund was great. What are you expecting from all four of those guys today? Is it going to carry over?
Yeah,
Does Harley take this and feel even better about himself?
I don't know if Thomas can feel even better. I don't know if he can. Know. He always feels good about himself, which is a great quality to have. I just think that he's probably the one that sticks out the most, that I think probably gained the most coming into this tournament, because it was unexpected to start with. He gets his opportunity. He steps in there. And again, like Doug Armstrong said, and I'm sure Pete said the same thing, very pleasantly surprised and came in as advertised. And that means that Pete was talking about him in a good light. So, but Thomas has got the confidence. And I think he, not just the playing the game things, being around all those players, for, in his case, being around the Crosby and the McDavids and Drew Doughty and, some of them big names that are there, and knowing that he can play with those guys and he sees how they go about their business. And there's maybe little things that he picked up on prep or in a game or something like that he will start to use or put into his toolbox. But I just think there was such a great confidence thing for him, mainly because he played so well. Some clown on ESPN said something about, and watch Thomas Harley. He hasn't been that good tonight. I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I remember when we were watching, it was in between periods.
Yeah, it was.
You're like, what?
Yeah,
where's that
I don't know
from?
where that came from, because I thought he played exceptional,
honestly,
under the circumstances.
Hearing from your buddy, Doug Armstrong, the GM of Hockey Canada, Jim Nill, Pete DeBoer, they were, and then I was listening to Elliot Friedman and Kyle Bukauskas, their 32 Thoughts. They couldn't praise Harley enough. From the Canadian side, they were thrilled with the step that he took as far as the men's senior team.
There may be one area, try not to do too much, because you don't have the same guys on the ice that you did with,
You're talking about today versus playing for Canada.
And I'm not taking anything away from but the players that he played with over the last week, they're elite players, but they're elite thinkers.
You're saying that Ilya Bushkin and Drew Doughty might be different?
Well, I'm just saying even forwards, because they think the game so fast and they're in the right spaces all the time and they anticipate differently. And again, that's not it's just it's the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the best players in the world all together, or most of them all together, you have to play at a certain pace and things happen quicker. And so, and again, play within yourself. Just because you were there and you got to wear that jersey and you got to win the whatever kind of toy trophy they got for winning this event.
Heading to the Hockey Hall of Fame as we speak.
Yeah, exactly. So, now you're back into reality. I mean, that was a great taste, a great experience for you. I think there's nothing negative to come out of that whole thing. And so, again, you're probably going to be a little step or half a step quicker than some of the guys in your team just because they haven't really done much. You can call practice and skating. That was more about getting some of the booze out of you than anything else.
Go.
Or, one of the health drinks that they were all drinking.
Yeah, all the protein shakes they have now. Let's talk about the Devils for a minute. Take a look at their lines as how they get – this is the big thing for them is Jesper Bratt showed very well for Sweden at the Four Nations. We talked about how we both thought Hughes, for his high expectations, didn't quite live up, but they get their captain, Nico Hischier, back. He missed 6 games due to an oblique injury. He was hit by Nick Suzuki on January 25th. They said 4 to 6 weeks at the time. It's been a month. That's a big deal for them because he's such an important player, and he's been really good. What do you think of this forward group? Erik Haula was also part of the Finnish Four Nations team. Haula hasn't – this is crazy. 0 points for the Devils in his last 21 games.
Yeah, that's surprising. I've always liked him, and mainly because of his speed. The way he goes about it, he
plays hard,
and he plays hard. He's good defensively minded. He's he's one of those kind of guys, and I think down the middle, those top 3 guys are quality players. And a new coach and a little different of a system that they have there, and they got off to a really good start. Then they hit a speed bump in there, and their defensemen, I like their group of D too. There's
Let's take a look at their D.
Yeah, I love Brendan Dillon.
Yeah.
I wish he was still here, to be totally honest with you.
A long time ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure has. And he's been in some big bouts. I mean, he's that big guy back there, and when you want to play that kind of game, Brendan's the first guy to step in. Dougie Hamilton, when he's healthy, he's one of them kind of guys. He's similar to Harley. They get up the ice.
I think Pesce is a good player they got from Carolina.
Yeah, and, the other Hughes. I mean, Luke is going to be a good player. It's his younger brother, and so I think I don't want to say weakness, but the weakness for me is the goaltending right now.
Yeah, well, Jacob Markstrom picked up a nasty MCL sprain when he was hit by the Boston Bruins forward, sorry, John, Justin Brazeau. He's out, although he's returned to practice this week, and apparently the Devils leave after the game. So if you think the Stars have a tough schedule playing a back-to-back after the break, so do the Devils, but they're in Nashville tomorrow night, the beginning of a 5-game road trip, which finishes in Dallas 10 days from now. So the Stars haven't seen the Devils all year, 2 games in 10 days, because, of course, that's how the schedule makers will do it. But Markstrom's going to go on the trip. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jacob Markstrom play the Stars in Dallas in a week and a half.
If they get a healthy Markstrom back and they run it out the rest of the season after that, they're going to be a tough team in the playoffs. I think that Markstrom is a quality goaltender. There was a big move when he came to New Jersey, so I think they're looking forward to having him back. And when that team gets running on all cylinders, they can score some goals. They can put the puck in the net.
Sam just texted our group. According to the starting lineup, Harley is with CC. I wonder if that's going to stay that way or if that's just the way they're going to begin. Honestly, Lindell and Lyubushkin play together so well on the penalty kill. I understand why they would do that
and
too.
You can keep them guys together then, because if you want to trot them out on your first part of the penalty kill, they just do it as a pair, you know, then they get a little more familiarity with each other. So that's what I said. I can see CC Lyubushkin flip-flopping with those 2 guys. I don't think it should really matter.
All right, this is one where Luddy's going to roll his eyes at me and say, this one is dumb. Don't even bring it up. But I'm going to anyway. Okay. Let's talk about bubbles. Because
what?
Like face visors, face shields. Dallas has actually reduced the number of bubbles that their players are wearing. Matt Dumba at practice this week back to a visor. I'm curious if that affects his game at all. Remember, he has points in his last 2 NHL games before this break and kind of played all right against LA and San Jose, whatever. Mason Marchment went from the bubble to back to his visor, but then that fixed jaw piece that he has. And Matt Duchene, who went with the huge, gigantic visor after he broke his nose, is back to his normal one. He said after practice the other day that his nose is healed up enough so he doesn't need to. And Luddy, the whole reason I brought this all up to say is apparently Matt Duchene isn't that superstitious because with the bigger one, he had 2 goals and an assist in consecutive games, 6 points in the last 2 games of that California road trip. And if he was superstitious at all, he'd probably keep that big long one on for a little longer.
Yeah, I don't think 2 games just get it. No, I think you're a little freer. I mean, it's like, taking the cast off when you're at it. You're a little bit freer, and you can breathe a lot better. The one guy I think is going to be a little bit freer, I think, is Mason Marchman. Even though I may not have looked at it that when he was wearing that fishbowl, but I think you're going to see more of what we saw from him, and and again, he's back. You know what I mean? He's had some time, and so he's back in. But yeah, I don't any difference from those guys. I just think there's less distractions on your head.
Yeah. Now, the last thing is on the Devils. We talked about the players. We talked about a couple of the injuries. I mean, the last time the Stars and Devils played, which was last year, they had Nemec and Luke Hughes as their top pairing because, they had injuries. Dylan wasn't on the team. They've retooled by getting Pesce and all that. But they also beat the Stars 6-2 in Dallas after Dallas did the same thing in New Jersey. The Devils were really good, Luds, until after the Christmas break. Since December 28th, they're 7-9-3. I think their 4-0 win in Montreal to go into the break at the Bell Center did a number for them. They needed it because they have only won consecutive games one time since the end of December. They've struggled. A lot of that is goalie, right?
Yeah, I look at goaltending. I look at the schedule. I don't know how many teams probably didn't hit some kind of a skid this year, with the exception of Washington and Winnipeg. I mean,
you think January was just a culmination of so much fatigue for every team in games? Because it seemed like a lot of teams had moments in January.
Not only that, the same stuff that happened to a lot of players during this Four Nations deal. A lot of guys were sick. I think there's something going through there. And somebody was talking today. There was one team. There was a couple guys questionable to play today or tomorrow because they're sick, and there was a coach that was sick. So I just think it's kind of, and again, you play against each other, right? And everybody's playing against everybody in that tight schedule that everybody had in the beginning of this. And so it's crossing over, whether you play directly against somebody or with somebody else that was playing against another team, and you play that team. So there may have been a few guys under the weather on that club.
I know it's a break, but Jamie Benn has a 4-game point streak, 5 points, including his 397th career NHL goal against the Sharks. The Stars also have Maverick Bourque with 3 goals and an assist in his last 5 games. That's dangerous. If anything, Maverick didn't want the break for that because things were starting to click for him.
He's going to be okay. I just think that his confidence is where it was and where he wants it to be now. And for a young player, I think it's so important for him probably over this break. He was probably thinking about it. I want to get going. So I don't have any problem with those guys. I think they're going to, again, this is a little bit different this game, maybe even tomorrow, but it's going to be like that around the league for the first couple games.
It's not quite the stretch run, but we're getting back to it. And pretty soon, trade deadline, as Luds was talking about, 2 weeks away. After a 9 games in 16 days, there's going to be 20 games left until we talk playoffs. So it's around the corner.
The teens are right after that.
Oh boy, and now
when you get in the teens, now we're looking at playoffs. Now you're an excited player, as long as you're in the running.
Yes, and the Stars will definitely be. For Craig Ludwig and Sam Nessler and our producer John Anderson, I'm Owen Newkirk. Thanks for joining us. We'll be here for the full post-game show after Stars versus Devils.
Tomahawk City.
We all silly like the mayor.